on the heels of the debut of Miro in AEW, we're going to be talking about whether or not Rusev in the WWE was a missed opportunity. We got my man Jack Farmer, we got Flobo Boyce here, but I wanted to specifically talk to Jack Farmer as well because I know he's our AEW resident special correspondent. And obviously we're just on the heels of Miro turning up in AEW when he debuted on Dynamite. So when you first saw him show up on AEW Dynamite, did you think it was a good fit as far as AEW as opposed to Impact or some of the other companies that are out there?
Right off the bat, of course, it's a good fit because I think right now, if you're not in the WWE, AEW in America, anyways, is the company you want to be a part of. It's the biggest, it's the most successful, and I think that AEW is a bit of a company that allows for people with different personalities and different types of walks of life to find a way for themselves. So I think it's a great fit for him. And I think it's a great place for him to be, especially because they seem to be a company that is very pro their people having their own things outside of the wrestling ring, as well as kind of building their own brands and doing their own things, which is what he wanted to do all along.
At the time of this recording, we're early September. We're just on the heels of this kind of newsworthy week as far as WWE allowing their wrestlers, independent contractors, having like third party kind of revenue coming in. So I think that was a big one on why. The big one on obviously Rusev or Miro coming out saying, you know what, he's a big gamer. He loves being on Twitch. As far as being on Twitch, do you think that's important, Flobo, for guys to have that ability, especially being a big employer like a WWE? Like, how do you know you're not going to have some of your guys come in and make $1 million on their own when they should be making it for the company that you work for?
Yeah, so it gets kind of a weird thing with professional wrestling because somehow you'll say, no, these are athletes or talent. WWE has complete control of these characters and develop them the way they see fit. We think of AJ Styles being that you can't break this redneck, right? That was kind of built with the kind of theme song and presentation and all that. But at the same time, when it comes to other crafts like stage acting, when Lin-Manuel Miranda drinks Nescafe, he's not Hamilton when he does it. In that way, you think a performer should have that leeway to do their own. It looks like WWE is saying you can do that now as long as you're not just saying your ring name. You can use your real name. You see some of the Twitch channels are changing. Mike Rome just changed his name back to his legitimate name in Austin, so that's kind of a leeway there. But I'll tell you what, when the news broke, maybe it was misinformation or a leak or someone played the game of telephone. It was a response no one wanted to hear, and it added fuel to the fire that WWE was being too hard on talent as far as them expressing themselves outside of the ring.
Now, this isn't necessarily a bio video, but we are going to talk about a lot about Rusev's career in the WWE. On where do you think that maybe as far as his peak goes, where it should have gone, or maybe they made a wrong turn, because obviously they made a wrong turn, whether or not it's the WWE's fault or Rusev's fault for the fact that he's not there anymore making the company money, and he's not making money from the company as well. Now, Rusev started in WWE, obviously in the early 2010s, being in developmental. He was in FCW before he converted to NXT. His unofficial debut was at the Royal Rumble 2014 as Alexander Rusev. Then he made his official main roster debut alongside Lana right around WrestleMania 30 time. He was this kind of, obviously squashing a lot of the guys, squashing Kofi, squashing Xavier, I'm sure the Curtis Axels and all those guys as well. So he was built right off the bat as a monster, to the point where he was practically undefeated for a full year up until he faced John Cena at WrestleMania 31, coming out with a tank. I was there. I don't know if you guys were, but I was in San Jose for WrestleMania 31. I still mark out for the tank. Like that to me, being Rocky IV being one of my favorite movies of all time, very Rocky IV-ish with, Lana coming out. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh, you don't like Rocky IV? Or you just didn't think I was...
I didn't know what your favorite movie was, George. I learned something new.
Well, no, it's not my favorite movie, but it's definitely... I think it's best... I know New Day had a podcast not too long ago where they were talking about the Rocky movies, and Rocky IV is definitely the best out of the bunch. Rocky 1 is good. Rocky 1 is good, too. Don't get me wrong.
Rocky 6 myself, but that's just...
You like Rocky Balboa?
Yeah.
I feel like that doesn't count. I feel like that's a different series, and I know there's no like reason for it, but I feel like you break those up.
Okay.
I'm a fan of the name Mason the Lion Dixon. I always thought that'd be a cool wrestling name, and obviously it was taken by Rocky Balboa. But what did you guys think? Did you think that when that happened, Cena versus Rusev coming out in a tank, did you think that this was kind of the beginning of maybe like a big time, even bigger push than what he was already getting?
I never think that someone's going to get a bigger push from a match with Cena. I don't think Cena's not in a negative way, but Cena's the guy. Like everything that Rusev did before that was so he would be justified in having a match with Cena. That's what was happening there. So I didn't expect him to, continue his streak through Cena after that, if that's what you're asking. I do think the spectacle of the tank, I think that defines Rusev in WWE, though. I think as soon as everyone talks about Rusev, they say that, him coming out on the tank. I think that was his biggest moment. I think that's the one he'll probably be remembered for. Depending on his run in AEW, that'll probably be the defining moment of his career.
Yeah, I got to go with Jack there. Look, it was one thing if he faced Cena and never wrestled again. Yeah, okay, great. But there's years that came after that, and then he was up and down the card before and after. It is interesting, like you said, Jack, when someone talks about Rusev, it's like, oh man, the tank. But WrestleMania is the one place where they have entrances. Like Del Rio had a car every week for a year and a half. I mean, I think about that when it comes out. It's a hard play to say, especially with John Cena. It felt it was built for that match, and he served that purpose. But you can't deny anyone who got a match at Mania with talent. You have to be a certain level to even get tickets to that dance. So props for that.
And with John Cena, no less. John Cena doesn't just have matches with whoever.
So with that said, do you think that those losses, not just to Cena at Mania, but in the months afterwards in the rematch, for the United States Championship, do you think that kind of dropped Rusev down a few notches in terms of like thinking that he's now going to be a legitimate player in the WWE?
It's funny you mentioned about wins and losses, because we always talk about to be relevant, you got to get dubs, right? You got to get those wins and got to get those losses. We also know with tenure, there's some characters that can be reheated and moved up to card. And so Rusev is a perfect example of that, because if you remember, what Rusev started as was a blow-off feud with Randy Orton where Rusev won, and it was kind of like hey, I beat Randy Orton, kind of like a lovable underdog, and it became super huge. So I don't know, maybe right after that match with John Cena, I would say, well, he's probably buried. But Rusev found a way to get back to himself to be the top of the card. When merchandise sales were through the roof, people were saying it. They were spin-off Aiden Day, Lana Days. Who cares?
Yeah, I don't think one win or loss ever really defines a person or makes or breaks or someone. So I think that I don't think that him losing there crushed him. I don't think beating Randy Orton necessarily made him. To Flobo's point, I think he's someone who was very pliable, and you could put him in a lot of different spots up and down the card. I think that's the defining strength of him. Actually, is that you could have him in some lower tier rivalry, and it's great. You could move him up the card, and he looked like a visible threat, and it was great. And I think that's what makes him great. Is that he's pliable. You can put him anywhere, and it makes sense, and it fits. If he needs to be funny, he can be funny. If he needs to be serious, he can be serious, and that's an incredible talent that a lot of people don't have. I think a lot of people take for granted.
We might sidetrack a little bit, and that's okay, because I want to ask you guys about just your general mentality behind acts as far as tag teams or trios or couples, where if they're on TV, there's this kind of feeling amongst fans that's saying they're on TV until they're going to break up. So, obviously we saw Rusev and Lana together, and I think a lot of people were saying they were or at least they were teasing on TV, like, oh, there's some dissension between Rusev and Lana. This is before they were married. They were just kind of acquaintances on TV, if anything, implying that they were a couple. But you saw some dissension. We saw that storyline with Rusev and Summer Rae, Ziggler and Lana. Like, do you think that benefited Rusev in some ways? Do you think this would just kind of give him more character? Because I love the Rusev and Lana pairing, when Lana coming out to her own theme music, her introducing Rusev, and now you have this kind of this wrench in it, with Summer Rae coming in dressing up as Lana. Like, do you think that benefited Rusev in some ways?
I think it was great for him. I think anytime you create tension, it's good in wrestling. That's what we watch it for. Wrestling is a conflict show. We want to see conflict. We want to see tension. And so when those things happen, it's good. I think especially kind of the yo-yoing of, tension, and then it's less tension, and there's more tension, and there's less tension. That's what keeps you interested, because you want to see what happens next. If it's just, hey, we're a couple together, that gets boring. And in wrestling, you can't have, hey, we're just, everything's good, nothing's wrong. That's when people get tuned out of it. But when there's that tension there, then suddenly everything feels like it means more. Because when Rusev loses, you go, uh-oh, is this going to make Lana mad? If Rusev wins, you think, is Rusev going to say he doesn't need Lana anymore? Those are things that are good. Tension is good. I know we have our favorites and we want everyone to just get along sometimes, but as I said at the top, wrestling's a conflict show. We want to see conflict, and I think that helps. That makes it more interesting.
No. I completely disagree. And look, man, maybe I'm jumping ahead here, but Rusev will always be a B- or a B superstar in WWE. I'm sorry, he's flirting with the top of the card. He's flirting with the top of the card. He was in an angle last year with the Bobby Lashley Lana thing that absolutely, I can confirm, served absolutely no one. But here's a problem with Rusev, right? So here's someone who was Russian, Bulgarian, Russian, where have you, because they kept flip-flopping, rolling with Putin or not. They kept saying he was a brute. He was a brute. His finisher is the accolade. Like, he was basically a human cyborg, soft machine. And all that time, there was no character development rather than, my girl. And so when you have a character like that, who has such a simple and direct desire and story, when he's not on TV in 2 weeks, or when the girl leaves, there goes all of the tension. Like, there goes, how will Rusev recover? Well, in this last issue with Lashley, he lost 3 times in a row, and that was that. With the whole Summer Rae thing, yeah, we danced around, but, like, really, we're Summer Rae now. So I don't know. I really feel like I kind of will blame the WWE for this, and that it never really got out of second gear of giving Rusev challenges besides what's Lana going to do to him next.
There was a kind of a sprinkle in the middle of it with League of Nations. I think everybody agrees that League of Nations, which is a total flop. I like the concept of the idea. I even like the theme song. But if all 4 guys say they hated League of Nations, I'm not going to be that one guy say, oh, actually, it was pretty awesome. If they weren't into it, then so be it. But one of the big controversies during that big quadruple love triangle, or love quadruple, or whatever. Love square, right?
It's quadrangle. Yeah.
Whatever. Quadrangle. I don't know if that's even a word. Was the fact that on TMZ, you see that Rusev and Lana got engaged in real life. Now, I really want to get your guys' opinion, especially now where you have the WWE that obviously they said even recently in that edict saying, we invest tons of time and money in you guys, so you guys got to kind of play by the rules. But then you have Rusev and Lana getting engaged in the middle of this storyline with Ziggler and Summer Rae, to the point where they completely drop that storyline. Do you think that was? Do you blame WWE for being a little upset with that?
No, not at all. I think that I get where WWE is coming from in that regard. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that, I mean, yeah, you push these stories and you push these things on camera, and then when something happens that's in complete opposite of that, outside of it, it does sort of hurt the illusion. Now, I know we all know it's not real. We all know it's a show, but the goal is much like I would say, like a magic act. We know that magic isn't real, but you want to blur that illusion. What? If before the show starts, if the magician says, by the way, my friend in the audience is who I'm going to bring up for my surprise assistant, it ruins the illusion a little bit. You want to keep that. And so that's where I get where the WWE could get frustrated with something like that, because you're trying to create this illusion and that shatters it when that happens. So I'm not saying that they should have the right to prevent them from getting married or anything like that, but I'm saying I understand where WWE would be frustrated that something like that could happen.
The days before the settlements, right before McMahon had to basically come out and say it was sports entertainment, I would see where the company's coming from. But like, you look at a show like Dexter, where that couple got together, even though they played brother and sister on air, they got together and got divorced during the whole course of the show. So like, there is cool gossip and stuff like that. Wrestling fans are not your typical fan base, and they can be a lot more what's to say, fervent or sophomoric, and they try to be like they know everything when they don't, and they don't like want to sit back and watch entertainment and pretend they know what's going on. I get that, and I get why that could mean put your writer staff in a pickle. But as a human being, you can't stop love if you really are in love with this person because of an angle. That's not fair.
Yeah, and again, I want to clarify just so we're clear. I'm not saying that they shouldn't get married or they should stop love or anything like that. I'm saying I could understand where, as a company that invested in it, you'd be frustrated that it got out or it became that big of a story or everyone found out, and it shattered that illusion. Because wrestling is a little different than TV. Again, I'm not saying that it necessarily everything's real on there, but it's you're trying to blur that line, and when something happens that stops that blur, then it just stings a little bit.
I mean, do you think it can be a little frustrating because, and again, this is me coming from both sides, where you have the WWE kind of emphasizing saying, hey, this is entertainment. Like, what we do is entertainment. We tell stories. We make movies. You know, these are all quotes that Vince McMahon has said very, very publicly on multiple platforms. We're entertainment. You know, we're not really doing this. We're here to put a smile on people's faces. And then you have, for the most part, in my experience, and I know maybe yours as well, Flobo, since you've done some stuff in the business, is that I think for the most part, pro wrestlers, they want to kind of keep character, right? They want to kind of have WWE sit there and act like as if everything is a shoot legit and everything. But it's WWE that's kind of saying like, no, we're just kind of putting on a show. We have scripts every week. We got writers. They're the ones kind of saying all these terms that's saying that it's not real. So you have Rusev kind of like, and again, I'm sure Rusev's very much so, again, as a wrestler, they're all saying like, you know, I kind of want to keep it in character. But if you guys aren't going to do that, then don't get mad at me when real life actually happens. And then you guys have to abandon the storyline completely. It's just one of those where there's a lot of wires that are getting crossed. And again, I'm not working there. I never worked there. But it does kind of feel like WWE did kind of punish Rusev a little bit for that, for kind of them having to drop their storyline because it showed up on TMZ that they got engaged.
Punish is kind of a harsh word because he had a job for years, you know. Yeah, and much like in wrestling too, I think the individual performer loves being the bridge to the old days of kayfabe. I think it is a bit of a challenge there. Say, can I hold this character outside the ring and not be, you know, Billy Bob Smith at the Enterprise rent a car on Tuesdays and I have to go my work shift. I get that. But I do think with this case, yeah, it probably, hey, you left money on the table, we're going to cool you off a couple months. But I mean, had it been an injury, you know what I'm saying? Like, I really feel like there's so many things that could have been outside of their control that would have been shrugs, it happens, you know.
So we saw them on together a little bit, and this is one of the first times that I think they dropped the ball. Me personally, and I maybe it's no fault of their own because I know Rusev got hurt, but there was a promo, and I don't know if you guys remember. I want to say it was early 2017, maybe late 2016, where you had Rusev come out. I want to say he was with Jinder Mahal, and it was on Raw. And in the ring was like Big Show, Big E, Big Cass. Rusev comes out and like, and personally, I thought he was just, this still had me rolling, and I love watching on YouTube still, where he comes out, it's like, oh, what is your name's Big E or Big Show? We get it, you're big. Like, why do you have it in your name? It's like calling me handsome. You don't see me calling myself Handsome Rusev every day. And it was just like his delivery was just so like, my God, like this guy's hilarious. And like I think that was one of the first times we kind of saw like humor when it came to Rusev. And I kind of compared it a little bit to Kurt Angle, where you had Kurt Angle come in, Olympic gold medalist, legit badass, tapping people out to the to the ankle lock, and I know that's a pre-ankle lock, but like, you had him, Olympic slamming it, being a double champion, right? But then we saw certain aspects in Kurt Angle, and I'm sure when he was presented with this, I'm sure he was like, "What am I doing? I'm an Olympic gold medalist. You have me doing things with Edge and Christian, dressed up as hillbillies, or you had me doing this with Austin and singing Kumbaya." But it was the best thing probably for Kurt Angle's career, and they went with it to the point where it added so many layers to Kurt Angle's character. So I saw the same thing in Rusev, where I'm like, yo, this guy's a legit badass, and he's presented as a badass, but now he's kind of added on a new layer, but they never went anything with it. I know they did a few weeks, and I know he got hurt, but when he came back, it was like it never happened.
I think that, I mean, it's obviously a possible, that's a alternate universe that they could have gone in. I think he can talk on a mic. I think he's entertaining. I think he has that quality to him. I don't know, but I think what the WWE kept saying to themselves, and I've never worked there. I don't know, but I look at what we say at the very beginning. The first thing you think of with Rusev is him coming out on a giant tank as this Bulgarian brute. And if that's what we all see and that's what we all want and think about, why not make him the thing that we all think about? That was probably their thought process. And if he was on that tank going, "I'm handsome," we'd all go, "What? It wouldn't."
Rob Conway. Just look
just look at me.
I think it doesn't surprise me that if you're in the back and you're like, "Wow, everyone keeps talking about how cool it was when you were on the tank as the Bulgarian brute. Let's do that." Right or wrong, I think that's probably where they were coming from. But you're right. I think he can be very funny on a microphone as well. But it's hard to be intimidating and funny at the same time.
But what about Kurt Angle though? Like, you had Kurt Angle who came in as Olympic gold medalist, but then they added a whole nother layer. But that didn't eliminate the fact that he was a legit guy that can tap you out within seconds.
Well, I'm not saying it's impossible. I mean, Big E does it. Big E's, he's funny and he's also a crusher. But I'm just saying it's tricky. It's tough.
Yeah, it definitely comes down to the writing staff. Like, this is like a comic book thing. Like, to me, it's an easier sell to make this absolute badass who trains so hard he's a dork. And that's what Kurt Angle, his humor was really dorky humor. It wasn't like he was sitting there like dropping insults and doing like, rapping bars in the booth or anything. It's like, "My name is Kurt, I'll make your ankle hurt." The Hands of Rusev stuff works, but if he had a dedicated producer, then maybe week to week that can work on that. But you can imagine being like a Raw staffer and be like, "Make another funny skit with this character." I'd be like, well, that last week took Big Show and Big E in the ring to make that work. How do I do that again? Like, it isn't the Fashion Files where it writes itself. Fashion mistake, let's make fun of it. I think it has to be very specific situations. Back to the first Rusev Day. That was hilarious because Randy Orton was in the mid-card. It wasn't like he beat Randy Orton. It was a very beatable Randy Orton. He goes, "I beat Randy Orton, Rusev Day." That's hilarious,
Because even talk about Rusev Day for a little bit, and I love that you mentioned that because I was just going to transition to that. So you're a pro. But we had that, and I think at first, we all thought like, "Oh, that's clever, that's cool," but then it just blew up. Like, it legit blew up to the point where I wanted a T-shirt, but every time I would go onto the website to buy a T-shirt, it was always sold out. So you think from like a fan or even like a businessman.
What did you do? Did you buy a Lana Day shirt instead?
No, I never got one. But I never ended up getting one.
I would be fascinated to know the Lana Day sales numbers.
I hated that gimmick. I hated Lana Day. Lana is the best. Lana #1. I hated it. But we're not here for that. I love Lana though sometimes. And so like when we see like, man, like these shirts are selling. Same thing happened with Zack Ryder. He had some generic shirt that was always sold out, but then for whatever reason, we never really saw it translated on TV. It was just, and again, I'm not trying to pit Vince as the bad guy. I'm not trying to pit WWE as the bad guy, but we kind of hear a narrative where if that's not in your plans, if they see you as a mid-card, you're going to be a mid-carder for life. If they never legit see you as the main eventer, doesn't matter how many T-shirts you sell, you're not going to be a main eventer.
I think sometimes, look, I love Rusev Day too. I think sometimes the crowds, though, love to see the established guy that wins all the time take a loss to the guy who shouldn't beat him. And I think they jump on that sometimes. And I think that a lot of it was that he beat Randy Orton more so than anything else. I also think from a writing standpoint, it's harder than I think us fans think to pivot completely. If you didn't think it was going to be something to come up, we didn't have a plan for a Rusev Day after this. Now we got to come up with something. Mm-hmm. But while coming up with something, that means you got to take something away because you had something else planned that's going to take up time now. So what are you taking away? And I think I agree. Look, I think they should have taken more advantage of it. I'm not saying that that's not the case, but I sometimes think it's a bit harder than it sounds to do all that. And I sometimes think the WWE knows that, like if someone's going to beat John Cena or Randy Orton or any of those super established guys, everyone's going to love it because they win all the time. And so sometimes you have to go, well, is this really what we're hearing? Or is this just WWE had it stuck to them?
Yeah. And George, look, you're a wrestler. You understand differences in the card. Like a lot of wrestling fans, we like a guy or gal, we want to push the moon. For example, I'll always compare this to Cesaro. Here's a guy I think has all the tools, but he's never in the main event. I would love to see if Rusev Day was over. I'm not going to take that away from him. It was one of the biggest things in wrestling, period, right? Rusev Day. But as a general manager, as an owner, you have a choice. You can either move him to the mid card and have him in the mid card for 3 or 4 months and then cool him off, or you keep your mid card, your upper card that's actually working, and overperform in your mid card. That hour 1 ad break is just as important as that main event sometimes. So if you know Rusev is going to come out at 9:59 or 8:59, here comes Rusev, and after the break, he's going to talk to the crowd. I'd rather keep him there, man. And I don't really think that's a WWE I don't like Rusev thing. It's add dollars, sell more t-shirts, and sells more opportunities kind of thing.
That's what I love about you, Flobo. You make some pretty good, like you notice those kind of things really, really well. Because it's true. You can have, you could either have an A+ main event and then, let's say C- middle of the show and C- open, or you could have, let's say, a C+ open, a A- middle, and an A- end. You can spread it out a bit. I also think that sometimes we like the person that isn't there because we want to see them there, but sometimes we're not always happy with what we get once they get that push. I'm not saying Otis and Rusev are the same thing, but right now everyone loves Otis, and Otis is great, but I think our perception of him would be a little different if he was the one that beat The Fiend and he was now main eventing every pay-per-view for the past 6 months. I think that love for him might change drastically, and it's possible that maybe the WWE saw that and was like, they like him because of where he's at, not because they want to see him somewhere else.
Oh yeah.
I do have a specific question to kind of throw out there to anybody who's watching or listening, and you guys can answer this as well. So let's say you have Rusev Day, right? So over, selling t-shirts, everything sold out. By the way, I love the Rusev Day calendar. Just because it's at Rusev Day every single day. But so people are asking like, oh, we need to push him, or fans are saying we need to push the guy. We need to put him in a more legit slot. But what exactly do they want? Are they saying that he should be main eventing WrestleMania? Like what exactly? Because you look at some other guys, and again, I can't speak for any wrestler, but there are some people that just want the TV time. They are perfectly content not being in the main event of WrestleMania because there is a big responsibility in being the champion. You look at someone like Eddie Guerrero, who months after becoming WWE champion, he pretty much publicly said like it was a lot of pressure on him. Now if the house shows are down, they're blaming the champion. If ratings are down, they're blaming the champion. Some people just don't want that responsibility, and that's okay. That is okay to think that way. So when I say that, like, somebody like Rusev, who seemingly just wants a little bit more than what he had, there are a lot of people that says like, yo, I'm happy with everything. Like, I'm making my money. I'm getting my 1 or 2 segments per week. So what is it exactly that the audience wanted from Rusev and his character? Like, what more? Like, it's easy to say like that guy should be pushed. How though? Like, what exactly do they want? What do you guys want in a push for somebody who is getting over? Like, is it just anybody who gets a chant, oh, let's put him in the main event of WrestleMania? Like, it doesn't really work that way.
Yeah, I think you answered your own question, man. I really think you're like, let's take an example of someone that I love to death, And I know people say I love the death is usually something negative comes after it. No, I love R-Truth to death. Why? Longevity. He has one of the best bodies in the business. Is hilarious, and you can even argue that he's as good now than he was back in TNA, back as King Quick. Like, he's getting even better in his age. But you'll hear him as 24/7 champion, knowing that it's really he's playing a comedy gimmick in the comedy division, and someone goes, he deserves a title run. Yeah. Now, I think objectively he might, but I really think wrestling fans use that title run or main event or should be pushed as their way of saying, I like this guy. And it sucks because it becomes all like hard to decipher. What do you mean? Like main event Mania, main event some Raws, but they want to have that title shot at Royal Rumble, but they don't have the chance of winning. We don't really know. We just go, I like that guy. He needs a push. He needs to, I want to see more of him, you know? So I don't think it's like anyone objectively being like a 3-month title run, then a ladder match. Like, it's not like that at all.
Right. I think that something with wrestling fans, and we're all guilty of this too. I think we believe that we know more about what's going on than we do, and that maybe we're more we should have input in things. And the truth is, so a lot of times people when they get what they want, they're not happy. I think a lot of times people just want to find things to nitpick and complain about, and find like, oh well, if this changed, it'd be different. But I don't think they're necessarily always right. If Rusev had beaten John Cena, I don't think the WWE is necessarily in a better spot after that WrestleMania. I don't think Rusev would have been able to take what John Cena did and carry that flag or torch or whatever the case is at that point. Again, I like Rusev, but I don't think that he's that same level. I don't know if there's any world champions he should have taken the place of. Well, maybe there's a few of them in there, but that's but there's it's easy to just say that, but then also I think people like him because of where he's at, and it's fun to want more. It's fun to want someone to grow and develop and get farther along. But sometimes I don't think people realize that, to do that, you got to remove somebody. And when you think of it realistically, is Rusev going to sell more than a Roman Reigns? I don't think so. Is Rusev going to sell more than a Fiend? I don't think so. Is Rusev going to sell more than John Cena? I don't think so. I think he's going to be great. But again, I think when you really stop and think about it, I know some people may listen to this and go, well, yeah, but if you had him win forever and come out on tanks every day and all this other stuff, maybe, sure. But I think if you did that to Vladimir Kozlov, you'd have, if you had an unbeaten Vladimir Kozlov coming out in tanks, beating every single person for 3 years, he'd be a star. But that's not the point.
And like you said, it's easy to say these things because at the same time, like let's say everybody gets what they want in Rusev, right? Is that going to move the thread? Is that going to move the needle? Probably not. Like WWE would probably be in the same exact spot that they're in right now had they would have pushed Rusev, into maybe like a more main event status. And a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people think that like it's easy to say like, this guy's going to get ratings. Try this guy. I'm not saying he didn't have the possibility to do that, but I'm saying it's all easier said than done. Again, not defending WWE, not trying to say that they are always perfect, not trying to say anything. But again, you said it. It's easier said than done. It's easy to say so-and-so gets a push, but odds are, like, one, you're still watching wrestling. We're also watching wrestling. We're all still complaining about so-and-so should have got a push. So-and-so needs to get a push. And it's like, it's never going to change. And not to say that we're all puppets, because we all – I think I speak for all three of us that we can all speak for ourselves. And if something is truly, truly bad, we might not watch. But for the most part, in the global landscape of pro wrestling, it's going to survive whether or not Rusev gets put in the main event slot or not. Fast forward a little bit, he got put in a team with Nakamura as if like they kind of gave up on him. So I don't blame him for. And again, I don't want to get too much into detail about the whole Bobby Lashley, Lana, Liv Morgan stuff because I think we can all agree it went nowhere. I think it had more potential for.
You can agree on that now?
Well, no. Okay.
Wow. For a while, I was the only one on the island that felt that way.
All I'm saying is that I think it could have meant a lot more for somebody like a Liv Morgan, but it still went nowhere. I thought that gimmick had so much, and I still say, I thought it had so much legs. I thought it had so much potential. Yeah. The Liv Morgan aspect, I think, added just a whole nother element to the storyline, and they just dropped it. And again, I'm not going to speculate why, but I thought that had potential when Liv Morgan came out.
I did think that had a ton of potential too, but I agree it didn't go anywhere. So I think you could have wrapped up a lot more people into it. I think it was something that again, there was tension. I think it was something that non-wrestling fans, if they heard about it, you get kind of caught up in it. Like, wait, what's going on? Oh man, that's his wife kissing this dude. Oh my God, that's crazy. And it blurred those lines. You had a visceral reaction when Bobby Lashley and Lana kissed. It was like, even as people who've watched wrestling for years, you're like, and which is blurring those lines. That said, end of the day, you're right. It didn't go anywhere, so it didn't serve anyone any favors.
I agree. It went nowhere.
So now, I mean, you look at his accolades, I guess you can say, not just the accolade, his finisher, but his accolades as far as 3-time United States champion. Obviously, he got the exposure to the point where he can probably make a lot of money off Twitch. Some may say that, hey, that's the career that I'd love to have in the WWE. Some would say, man, like I would have liked to have more. So at the end of the day, Flobo Boyce, I'm going to go with you because Jack, you were drinking something. Flobo, was Rusev a missed opportunity, or did they drop the ball on Rusev in the WWE?
No. I think there's certain times and talents in WWE where they got more mileage of than they would have. Not to compare them because it's not fair to, but you look at someone like the Great Khali. If I had something like that on my roster, I probably wouldn't have him in many as much matches as WWE did. Rusev got to go to WrestleMania against one of the greatest generational talents of all time. Rusev got to win over Randy Orton. He got one of the most high-selling T-shirts the last 10 years. Rusev got to headline a storyline over 6 months in a wrestling storytelling methodology. It goes, 3 weeks at a time? 6 weeks at a time? His story with Lana covered the SmackDown premiere at Raw. I mean, he did a lot. No, I get it, man. You are a wrestler. You dedicate years to the craft. To push through that last set in your mind, you're thinking of holding the championship. You're thinking of being the guy. I would too, because if you're not going to try to be the best, then why even try it? But when it comes down to it, I think his time at WWE was maximized for his skill set and what the audience needed at the time. So I think it was a good call for WWE to cover. It wasn't a missed opportunity at all.
Jack Farmer, did they drop the ball on Rusev in the WWE?
I agree with Flobo 100%. I think that I think he had a great career. Obviously, yeah, to Flobo, you took the words out of my mouth. Of course you want more. Of course he wants more. I don't blame him. I'd want more. But you got to imagine the top of the pinnacle is very thin. Very few people get much farther than that. I think when you look at his career and you look at all wrestlers of all time, if you look at every wrestler of all time, and you listed them all out in order of success, right? Rusev is so close to the top of that list in the grand scheme of things. He had such a good run there. And just the moment, like I said, it started the show coming out on a tank at WrestleMania to face what many would say, and it'd be hard to argue, the best of all time, John Cena.
Top 5.
I put him in top 5 too. But if you said he was the top all time, you'd have a pretty good argument. The point is, he had a great moment. He had tons of great matches. He had tons of titles. He did anything you could do in the WWE, basically. There's not really much he didn't do while he was there. So as far as a missed opportunity, I don't know what he missed.
So obviously you guys are very on YouTube as well. So where can people find you on the YouTube or Twitter and Instagram?
Flobo?
Well, you can follow, that's actually pretty good. You can follow me at Flobo Boyce on Twitter, at Flobito on Instagram. The Twitch right now, twitch.tv/Flobo Boyce. I'm allowed to stream whenever I want to. Be my friend, follow me there, and say what's up.
You can find me at jackcfarmer.com as well as at Real Jack Farmer across all social media. I also do the AEW Elite of the Week after show every Wednesday. I do the Draped in Gold after show with Flobo Boyce. I also am doing the Everything Tournament on Tuesdays Tuesdays, yes. Sorry, it's been bouncing around days recently. But anyways, the Everything Tournament. I also started a new show. It's called the Anytime Radio Show, where I play music of all different genres from all different decades every Monday. It's a good time. We chat, we play music. It's a good time. Check it out. You can find that on my website at jackcfarmer.com/mixes.
Hey, it's Christy Olson. If you like this video as much as I did, give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends so they can join in the wrestling chatter too. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and follow the show on Twitter at TW Chatter. See you next time.